Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you on Friday, September 15th on behalf of Arcadia Economics. Thanks for joining me again today. And in this quick video, just a few news stories that were out today. So far, no major market activity taking place today, but a few stories that I thought were relevant in terms of why so often talking about the signs of the world migrating away from the dollar, certainly towards precious metals. But just, you see these signs little by little. Sometimes they're a little bit more extreme, but in either case, just a few quick news stories I thought were worth pointing out, just so you can see some of the things that are happening that certainly if you're reading Wall Street Journal or watching CNBC, you're probably not going to hear about as much. So special thank you to Silver Doctors that had a lot of good stuff this morning when I pulled it up. Silver Doctors is a good website blog that I go to. A variety of stories and opinions, so feel free to use your filter. Like anything, just because someone says it doesn't mean that necessarily that's the way it is, but I like Silver Doctors because there are a lot of good opinions out there that I think have a lot of good information. Also good news feed. So anyway, with that said, number one on the list is that on September 25th, the LBMA Silver contracts are going to begin to be priced in Russian rubles and Chinese yuan, which I guess in addition to dollars they were mentioning, I believe it's already priced in pounds and another one of the major currencies. But again, kind of surprising, and perhaps surprising that it's happening now. And when I say that, again, and anytime something happens, there's a time that anything's going to happen. So don't want to read into too far imagining coincidences here, but just interesting how much there's that. Well, let me put it this way. There's a school of thought that when Gaddafi or Saddam Hussein first started talking about trading oil outside of the dollar system, that was when they really ran into problems. Can I prove that or verify that? No. Are there a lot of people that I would consider well-informed who feel pretty strongly about that to the degree that I think there's reasonable possibility, perhaps more than that. I think there's some truth to that. So, especially to see an asset like silver being traded in rubles and yuan, which again, the cat and dog to the U.S. Well, I guess one of those two would be the cats, the U.S. the dog. But in either case, you don't get the feeling that Trump or whoever's actually running the show in any rush to give Russia or China more international global power, and especially with an asset that's so controversial like silver, not necessarily a smoking gun that is going to make silver go up tonight or over the weekend, but again, one of these small signs that you're seeing moves away from the dollar that just we haven't seen before, and these things are continuing to happen, which brings us to number two on the list, is a proposal by the Mexican government that the Central Bank of Mexico will determine a value in pesos of the Libertad silver coin. Now again, seems like this is just a proposal, so by any means not set in stone. Although just the idea that a government is proposing some sort of silver backing to the currency, again, when we've talked about Andrew Maguire before and bullion coin and a lot of the projects he's been working on, a lot of them, and along with this potential, not potential story, but potential idea that could be implemented, maybe it will or maybe it not, with Mexico, you see these things add up where now people can trade silver assets that are backed by silver, and it's not just paper silver, forcing anything that goes towards the direction of actually requiring people or governments to back things with silver and make sure the silver is actually there. Certainly, to me, as a silver investor, are great signs, because I have yet to see anything in the last decade that leads me to see any way otherwise that all of the paper silver that's been written could be backed up. So let me put that a little bit more clearly. If all these paper contracts that say, hey, this is good for an ounce of silver, people actually collected on it, you're going to see the price of silver skyrocket, which is what we've talked about before, about some sort of integration between the paper markets and the physical markets, and certainly McGuire's bullion coin, or if the LBMA contracts actually start getting delivered, or if the Mexican government is actually going to put some silver aside. Interesting that it's Mexico, one of the larger silver producers. And also, you have to be wondering what the Mexicans are sitting there thinking. Well, Trump keeps talking about the Great Wall of Mexico and keeping the foreigners out, which, again, my perspective, I wish we could just all see each other as people rather than they're on this side, we're on this side. But, he's kind of been, not kind of, he's been poking and antagonizing. It's a little bit degrading. I'm almost embarrassed as an American just seeing the way that is the wall is implying as if a Mexican is some lesser great version of a human. And when you think about the U.S. fiscal position, and then here's Mexico that is a really large silver producer, it's kind of interesting to think how the base of power, you can see some of these things shifting going forward. So, again, maybe a little humility, being humble and learning to trade with our partners. Certainly, if you want to vote me in for president, that's what I would go for. Although, to the degree that Trump's president and kind of a little antagonistic to some of the other large nations out there, again, just interesting to see these signs. Last one for today. Actually, there are a bunch of good news stories out there, but couldn't leave out the Bitcoin. Obviously, the story this week is that China is cracking down on some of the trading platforms. And to be honest, I won't sit here and tell you exactly what's going on. I'm still digging into that one myself, although we did see Bitcoin pricing get hammered pretty good this week. A lot of the cryptos across the board, at least the major ones that I've been looking at, all have been trading lower. China is saying that they may make it difficult or outright ban some of the Bitcoin trading. And let me put it this way. Again, I don't claim to know exactly the answer to that. I would say it's a little bit early to say that the whole game is over, especially because, in my experience, markets don't really work like that. Now, on one hand, I'm a little surprised that this news would come out of China. It seems almost something more like what the U.S. would do to protect that reserve currency, whereas China, again, everything they've been doing, oil for gold, backing away from dollar-based trading mechanisms. A little surprised, and that's something I'll be researching and looking into more, why they would want to. It seems like there's a lot of advantages for China to be adopting Bitcoin. So certainly something that I'll be looking into more and reporting back on. Although in the story I read, one of the interesting notes was that Bharath Rao, who is the CEO of Leverage, which is a decentralized trading platform. Let me pull up his quote here so I can get it correct for you. Says, the price is always a solid metric of the market's greed and fear and reflects regulatory uncertainty at the moment. This also signals the development of non-custodial, let me try that again. This also signals that the development of non-custodial and decentralized models will accelerate. Regulation is neither necessary nor possible for decentralized models, and the future may have gotten just a bit brighter by nudging the crypto community to develop high-speed, non-custodial exchanges. So, again, that's what, with my, I guess not my original background. My original background was in Wall Street economics, and then I had to unlearn all of that by studying free market Austrian economics, which I guess is the opposite of there's the money printing, solves everything mentality, and then the folks who saw the housing bubble in advance and understood the way these interest rate cycles worked, we'll refer to as the Austrian Mentality, which I wish I had been studying before 2008. But I have adopted since then. And perhaps one way of phrasing it is that you can't change human demand. Now, you can alter things, and certainly, again, while maybe I'm surprised it's the Chinese instead of the US, to the degree that these infrastructure systems, whether you call it government or whatever, are going to fight to defend their base of power. No, it's not at all surprising to see any means possible. I'm sure whatever the IRS can do, whatever the US government can do to protect the dollar, make Bitcoin more difficult for people to use. I have no doubt that they'll try and do that. In the end, will it work? That's a question to be seen. And I get the feeling that I think we're a little bit past that point where some of these things can be pulled off so efficiently. Another way of thinking about it is, remember when they tried Prohibition, or certainly the drug policies that we have now, which people find a way to do the things that they do. In my experience of studying these things, usually when you try and prohibit something, creates a black market, which, is less ideal. But just to the degree that clearly the number of people are losing faith in these currency systems that we have and are looking for an alternative, and that there's demand for these things, I can't tell you exactly how it will play out, but my inclination is to think that I just find it interesting exactly what Bharath mentioned here. And whether it's him or someone else, I think certainly there will be a lot of people that will be, that's the entrepreneurial spirit, finding the need in the marketplace, finding a solution to deliver that. So keep in mind, Bitcoin has got smoked this week. It's trading back a little higher now. Let's pull up Bitcoin price for you here. Back up to 38.20. Litecoin, $54. Ethereum, $260. So, again, there's going to be a lot of volatility. And I would say you'd want to be careful if you're trading some of these things. I'm in the beginner phase. And part of why if you ask me today, my belief is that 5 or 10 years from now, these things will probably be worth a lot more. To the degree that I haven't studied this market as much as silver and the precious metals, I felt there was some value in just buying a coin getting used to interacting with the system, because in that way that anytime you do something, you learn about it. So with that said, I think the one thing that would be wise to expect if you're going to get involved in any level is that there is going to be a lot of volatility. There's a lot of moving pieces. It's something that's new. So personally, I have a small holding in Bitcoins that I'd like to think that I'll be holding and seeing how that goes over the next couple of years. And we'll see how this news with China shakes out. And then one last story here for you that really fits in with everything else we talked about today is that Venezuela, seeing a headline here, has stopped sending oil for dollars. And let's see, we have President Nicolas Maduro said last Thursday, Venezuela is going to implement a new system of international payments and will create a basket of currencies to free us from the dollar. Hinted further that the South American country would look to use yuan among other currencies. If they pursue us with the dollar, we'll use the Russian ruble, the yuan, the yen, the Indian rupee, and the euro. So, again, pointing these things out so that it's not just me, Chris Marcus, sitting here saying the dollar is on shaky ground, the signs are there. Timeline, we'll see how that plays out, but again, when you keep seeing these things, when you understand the history of where we've come from and where we might be going, again, that's why I feel it's important to understand that a lot of what we've traditionally been presented with about our financial system is about to change. So hopefully this gives you a few things to think about, helps see what's going on. I think we're nearing that point of significant change. And anyway, I think it's always good to have some of the background and just see what, there's what I think, what the guy down the street thinks, but then what the people are actually putting their money, in this case, governments or large trading partners, always relevant to keep in mind. So with that said, it's now Friday. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the subscribe button and then go out and enjoy your weekend. I appreciate you watching. Appreciate everyone who's been commenting. And we will see you again on Monday. Thanks.